You don't know how to hit the post. Have you ever done radio in your life? You have to hit the post.
6 seconds.
You're either
I'm actually looking at it right now.
15 seconds over.
6 seconds late.
Good thing we actually follow each other so it doesn't mess up the reruns. Just saying.
By the way, I've given you many, many seconds over the years. I'm just taking a few back.
All right, Tucker. Good to see you. Great show. Welcome to Hannity. Incredible breaking news night all over the place. The corrupt anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok has finally been fired. The damage is done. A politically motivated Clinton exoneration, a partisan witch hunt against the president, the weaponization of the FISA court system against the Trump campaign and the incoming president. And tonight we are still asking, where are the criminal referrals? The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, will join us tonight. And meanwhile, your corrupt mainstream media has a brand new obsession, and her name, Omarosa. After secretly recording President Trump and the chief of staff, John Kelly, in the Situation Room, and despite major, obvious credibility issues, yes, your mainstream media is more than happy to push all the salacious, over-the-top claims that are in her new book. And coming up, we're going to highlight the media's new preoccupation. We'll also cover the protests this weekend in Washington, D.C., ignored by the media, because for days, fake news CNN and conspiracy TV, MSNBC, and others, they've all been hyperventilating. This rally has a major gathering of Klan-supporting wackos. Well, turns out about 24 racist, apparently KKK sympathizing morons turned out and were completely dwarfed by scores of radical left-wing protesters, many even calling for the president's assassination and violence against the president. Oh, and the end of the United States of America. We have all that tape. We are warning you, it will be disturbing. Stay time. We have a very busy news night. Tonight's breaking news opening monologue to start things off. I have 7 words tonight for Peter Strzok. You have the right to remain silent. Months after being outed as an anti-Trump, pro-Hillary operative, Strzok has now officially been removed from the FBI. Now, today, President Trump reacted on Twitter. He wrote, quote, Agent Peter Strzok was just fired from the FBI. Finally, the list of bad players in the FBI, the DOJ, gets longer and longer based on the fact that Strzok was in charge of the witch hunt. Will it be dropped? Great question. It is a total hoax, no collusion or obstruction. I just fight back. Now, Strzok was fired by the FBI deputy director. Now, the Bureau's Office of Professional Responsibility, they only recommended only a demotion and temporary suspension. That's a problem. At this point, it is well known Peter Strzok helped fix the 2016 investigation into Hillary Clinton, despite what were obvious felonies we have chronicled on this program, where she mishandled classified, top secret information on a private server, where she clearly obstructed justice. Don't do this at home. If you have subpoenaed emails, you don't get to delete them, acid wash them with bleach spit, and bust your devices into little itsy bitsy pieces. If you do, I promise you, you will likely be charged. Remember, it was Peter Strzok. He personally worked on all of this, along with James Comey, to prevent her from being indicted. This case was open and shut from the get-go. And it was Strzok who helped draft the exoneration of Clinton months before she was interviewed, along with 17 other people, softening the tone of Comey's original letter, changing the language from the legal standard of gross negligence to extreme carelessness. And it was Strzok who actually led the interview of Clinton himself before she was officially cleared only 3 days later. The president tweeted, quote, just fired Agent Strzok, formerly of the FBI, was in charge of the crooked Hillary Clinton sham investigation. It was a total fraud on the American public and should be properly redone. Now, of course, Peter Strzok's corrupt actions didn't end with Hillary Clinton. He was also at the very center of the FBI's initial witch hunt into so-called Trump-Russia collusion. He's the one that texted his FBI mistress, Lisa Page, on his FBI phone that he would, quote, stop Trump from becoming president. And it was Strzok that texted that the investigation was like a, quote, insurance policy in the unlikely event that Trump actually won the election. Among hundreds of anti-Trump texts, it was Peter Strzok who called Donald Trump an idiot, abysmal, among other things. He's the one that said that Hillary should win 100 million to 0. He's not biased. Strzok, who also wrote he could smell those of us that supported Trump at a Walmart in Southern Virginia. We're probably bitterly clinging to our God, guns, Bible, and religion. Oh, we're the irredeemable deplorables that apparently smell. And in June, remember, the Office of Inspector General reported Strzok's actions were, quote, not only indicative of a biased state of mind that he had, but even more seriously, it implies a willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidate's electoral prospects. Yeah, what we've been saying. Now, despite all of this, a very smug Peter Strzok testified on Capitol Hill, really, that he wasn't biased at all. That's a joke, but take a look yourself.
Let me be clear, unequivocally and under oath, not once in my 26 years of defending our nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took. There's simply no evidence of bias in my professional actions. I'm stating to you it is not my understanding that he kicked me off because of any bias, that it was done based on the appearance. If you want to represent what you said accurately, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't appreciate what was originally said being changed.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok.
You texted Ms. Page, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support, and smell is in capital letters, all capital letters. What does Trump support smell like, Mr. Strzok?
Sir, that's an expression of speech. I clearly wasn't smelling one thing or the other.
Really? Now, only hours ago, House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy reacted to Strzok, getting canned and said that another deep state official would soon be called in for testimony. We are slowly but surely unpeeling the onion and getting to the bottom of all of this. Let's take a look.
We're going to interview him on August the 28th. I am going to come back to Washington. I'm going to leave my beloved South Carolina, and I'm going to go back, and I'm sure others will too. Jimmy and Mark and Ratcliffe, we're going to be back, and we're going to interview Bruce Orr, not in a public circus setting, but in a deposition with no time limits, and we're going to get to the bottom of what he did, why he did it, who he did it in concert with, whether he had the permission of the supervisors at the Department of Justice. It is, I used to work doing what Bruce Orr does now. It is unbelievable that a prosecutor would insert himself into an ongoing investigation for which he had nothing to do.
This kind of corruption in this country better not go unpunished, from Orr, from Strzok, McCabe, Comey, anybody else that clearly abused their power. If we're going to be a functioning democratic republic, our system of justice must be free of all political bias and political persecution. And that's why tonight, Strzok, Orr, McCabe, Comey, others, they better be willing to face the legal consequences. Oh, and by the way, Hillary, Rod Rosenstein, are you watching? Jeff Sessions, where are the criminal referrals? What's happening? You know what? I know the trial of the century is Paul Manafort, but it's not. Look at the list of DOJ, FBI bad actors as it grows. What are you doing to hold these people accountable? What is taking so long in this country? And as Mueller's anti-Trump witch hunt churns on and on and on, where's justice against those that weaponize your government against the political campaign? And then, of course, we had spying and unmasking and everything else associated with this. It's time they better act, or they need to step aside. And by the way, as a side note, Mr. Mueller, I know somebody on your team is watching tonight, if not you. Your buddy, Mr. Strzok, he taints every single aspect of your witch hunt. We'll have more on this in a moment. But first, it is time to report the mainstream media's brand new obsession of the week, which is Omarosa. Remember, she was fired from her position as a White House aide back in December, but she's now hawking a new book with many salacious, over-the-top claims about President Trump. Sean Spicer, I spoke with him earlier tonight, said her claim that he was paid to praise Trump and other things she's been saying are totally bogus. Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson, I also spoke to about an hour ago, called Omarosa disloyal, unhinged, and she claims that, Trump is racist and everything else she said, and says that things that Omarosa is now saying are also not true, and disputing things that she says in her interviews. Pollster Frank Luntz, who will join us in a moment, he called Omarosa's claim that he heard Trump use a racial slur flat out false. Big question tonight. How does a publisher in this day and age of lawsuits, how do they not fact check any of these claims? How does any self-respecting publisher allow this to go to print? They bring in the lawyers. Now, even the New York Times, remember they did a profile, yours truly, with that very handsome, well thought out picture of me. Now, I didn't agree with every angle or every point in the article or this hideous, despicable picture of me, even though they had 1,000 other choices to choose from. But on things like this, even the New York Times, I'm not a fan of, they would fact check twice, facts, not necessarily the commentary. So they did their job. Where's the publisher here? And remember, it was only a few months ago before that she was fired. Omarosa had nothing but praise for the president. Watch this.
Donald Trump is a very kind person. He has a really good heart. I spent time with him and his children and his family, and you can look at his family and see how close-knit they are. He's not going anywhere. He has staying power. Ask me if I would vote for him. I mean, I'm a journalist first and foremost, but I'm also interested in watching this political process unfold. He's like the Tiger Woods of politics. In my personal experience, Craig, which is why you have me here, I have never seen Donald Trump act inappropriately with women. He's always been very respectful. I stand with Donald Trump because I know that he has an incredible vision for this country, and he will indeed make America great, not just for this group or that group, but for everyone.
And over the weekend, Omarosa released secret recordings of Chief of Staff John Kelly and the general inside the Situation Room. She also released a phone call between her and President Trump that allegedly took place shortly after she was fired. The question I have tonight, I know the rest of the media won't even ask, how is it possible for someone to get a phone in the Situation Room? How is it legal to secretly record the President of the United States of America? Now, frankly, this shouldn't happen to a Republican, a Democrat, Obama, Bush, Trump. It's completely insane. Now, not only does this exemplify poor character, but it should also be illegal. And by the way, there should be consequences for those that do such things. But despite all of the very serious flaws and what is now all these claims in the book, the media is now turning and running wall to wall with any coverage, all Omarosa, all the time. According to Newsbusters, the network literally dedicated a whopping 93 minutes of coverage for this former Trump aide. Here's a small sampling of the coverage that just passed the last 2 days. Take a look.
The back and forth between Omarosa and President Trump seems to be getting heated.
Former White House staffer Omarosa Manigault-Newman is out with another secret recording.
Omarosa Manigault-Newman.
Omarosa Manigault-Newman making explosive claims against her former employer.
Omarosa was hired by Donald Trump multiple times. I mean, wherever she goes, Omarosa has a reality show following.
Well, Omarosa made some serious accusations.
Omarosa was brought in, by Donald Trump's own words.
Fired White House staffer Omarosa Manigault-Newman.
We've seen the White House take steps over the past few days to discredit Omarosa.
The Omarosa offensive.
The Omarosa tapes. Yeah, more evidence of Trump derangement syndrome at its best. And while the media is salivating at the mouth over the Omarosa story, they also made up time to hype up this weekend's rally that took place in Washington, D.C. They said hordes and hordes and hordes of racist white nationalists were expected to attend. In reality, you have 24 racist, disgusting, ignorant, racist morons that actually showed up. In fact, the counter-protest was filled with Antifa and other far-left demonstrators. It was far larger. The media called them anti-Trump protesters. They celebrated their righteous presence at the rally. But in reality, we have found many were not anti-Trump protesters or anti-hate protesters. They were anti-Trump. Some called for the end of borders, the end of the United States of America. And no, I'm not making this up. Take a look. No borders, no walls, no USA at all. And by the way, other so-called anti-hate protesters even called for the assassination of the president. No, I'm not making this up. Take a look.
What would you do if Donald Trump showed up at this rally? Murder him? Murder him for the people?
If it came down to it and it was a group effort, we'd have to do him like Gaddafi.
If I get a chance to him up, I would.
If the president showed up at this march, what would you do, sir? Beat his If Trump showed up today, what would you do, sir?
I'd throw a bell at him.
You'd throw a bell at him?
Yeah, why not?
It's only a small sampling of the tape that we have available. I don't have all night to show it. So there you have what CNN fake news called anti-hate protesters. And they wonder why the American people don't trust them. I've told you journalism in America is dead. It's buried. Right here on Hannity, we always make an effort to be fair and balanced because we will not be the destroy Trump media. Makes us different. Joining us now, the author of the New York Times bestseller, #1 New York Times bestseller, Liars, Leakers, Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy, Judge Jeanine Pirro, the host of Lou Dobbs Tonight on our sister network, the Fox Business Network. He's got the #1 show there. Congratulations. Good to both of them. Number one. Here we go. Listen, I don't even know where to start.
I don't either.
And by the way, we also have our own Fox News investigative reporter, Sarah Carter. I didn't mean to forget you. You're #1 too, Sarah. Let me start with you.
Okay,
you have a new
Sean.
report out tonight. I'll let you put it in your own words.
Well, yes, I have a report out tonight. I spoke to a number of FBI agents, former FBI agents, one in particular that worked for OPR. And we were talking and discussing about Peter Strzok and the fact that OPR was only going to give him a 60-day suspension, basically a slap on the wrist and demotion. And he was saying that it was incredible that FBI Deputy Director David Bowditch did the right thing. Remember, Peter Strzok was involved in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application that went before the secret court to spy on Carter Page. And the biggest part of this story that everyone's missing, this isn't about anti-Trump text messages. This is about the fact that they omitted and they withheld information from the court. That is a flagrant violation, they said, of the court and an abuse of the court. And this is probably the real reason why Peter Strzok was dismissed. You know, there's a lot of questions that are going to be coming out, particularly with Bruce Orr and his deposition. If he chooses not to turn up for the deposition on August 28th with Congress, he will be subpoenaed. But there are a lot of questions they're going to have for Bruce Orr about Peter Strzok and why so much information was withheld from the FISC court. And I think that's where this is going, Sean. That is going to be one of the biggest stories because withholding information is a violation that the FISC court just can't withstand.
And that's the FISA court, for those who don't. FISA court applications, FISC or FISA, two separate things, but the same thing. Let me go to the legality of this, Judge, and more importantly, how this would impact. He taints every single thing that supposedly Robert Mueller is looking into.
Exactly, and I talked about it in my open this week. If Robert Mueller's investigation is premised on Peter Strzok's information or lack thereof when he testified before Congress and said, I can't tell you this because the FBI wants me to keep it secret. And then when the FBI says you can talk, he says, I don't remember. If the basis of the FBI investigation is the fake counterintelligence investigation started by Peter Strzok, then Mueller goes down, any actions of Mueller goes down, and the whole investigation.
But the legitimacy has been questioned in the Manafort case and others, and because of the wide, deep mandate, was basically, investigate 2005 taxes that have nothing to do with Russia or the election.
Right.
It allowed for that.
They did allow for that, but you know, I'm a believer. I still think that hope springs eternal.
You're a believer? Really? You're a believer that investigations weren't fixed? You're a believer that FISA courts weren't lied to?
I am a believer that in the end, justice will be meted out.
If Hillary Clinton won, there would be no justice. We wouldn't even know this information.
You're right. You're right.
Lou.
We wouldn't know it, but what we do know right now is enough to make anyone's head spin. We know that this special counsel was conflicted from the very beginning. Mueller should never have been appointed. The special counsel should never have been created. And it's easy to lose sight of what this is all about. It starts really with Peter Strzok. He made the decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton.
With Comey. They were writing the exoneration in May.
He was leading the investigation. He helped James Comey write the letter that famously went from gross negligence, which was actionable on the part of the Justice Department guidelines, to extreme carelessness, which gave them a way out to avoid.
That's the legal standard to the non-legal standard.
But this is, again, Strzok. It is also Strzok leading the investigation when the FBI was in charge of the Russian collusion charge, and that narrative that laid the foundation for the special counsel.
And let me go to the start of where this all began, because we don't believe, Sarah, that it began as the left and the media has been advancing a narrative about George Papadopoulos and the Australian guy and meeting over drinks, and it just happened randomly. We believe it began way before, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I've spoken with George Papadopoulos' wife, Simona, And she testified before Congress, and she was emphatic before Congress, she told me, through the questioning behind closed doors, that there were so many players coming at her husband, you know, from Stephen Halper in Great Britain to Misfud, the professor, and all these people appeared to be giving information, trying to lure George Papadopoulos in, trying to give information that would eventually be able to be used against him by the FBI. And, you know, the special counsel went so far, Sean, as to threaten him. They threatened that they were going to charge him with being an Israeli spy. They kept threatening him over and over again until he pleaded guilty to one count of lying. Their lives have been ruined. But look, this is what the special counsel does. It has great expansive power, and that was given to them by Rod Rosenstein, who actually signed the 4th warrant on Carter Page to spy on him.
Well, that's the one we all really want to see and need to see, because at that point we knew Hillary paid for it. We know it was the bulk of information to obtain the FISA warrants. Let me shift gears just remotely here. Let me go to this weekend. In a sense, with all the hype leading up to the protest yesterday, the fact that you have, you know, maybe 30 ignorant, racist morons that show up at this rally shows that this narrative that Republicans and conservatives support these idiots, that's not true, even though it gets said every election. But more importantly, the media says, well, they're anti-hate. But I have tapes that go on for, you know, minutes of people saying they want to punch the president, be violent against the president, assassinate the president. A lot of people.
Destroy America.
Yes, destroy America.
Yeah, that's right. No border, no wall, no border, no USA at all.
See, here's the point. The media is going along with this theme that they are anti-fascist. They are not anti-fascist. They are the essence of fascism. And by the way, the right, the KKK, the white nationalists, you know, the 24 of them. At the end of the day, that's not what it was about. And I decry and detest everything they stand for. Let me make that clear. But when you go out there dressed up in a ninja getup as Antifa and tell people what they can read and not read, then that is fascism in America. And they decry us and say that they should kill us.
A pattern of violent rhetoric. Robert De Niro, Madonna, I can keep going. You know the list, you played on your show.
Absolutely. And these guys dressed up with their masks and their pajamas and just the ignorance they display. First of all, why isn't local law enforcement enforcing the law? There is no right to be violent on the streets anywhere in America, and yet they're being permitted because of Democratic administrations in jurisdictions where they be city or county that are permitting this. They've bought into this violence.
They actually get a stand down.
Have the media contributed to the hate rhetoric that, because it sounds, I mean, Hollywood, anyone, are they contributing to this atmosphere where we've never heard somebody say they want to assassinate the president?
But they're normalizing it. They're normalizing it by repeating it over and over again.
And it's extraordinarily dangerous, Sean. It's extraordinarily dangerous. Because yes.
Very quickly, this is the left-wing national media, by calling this anti-hate demonstrations and protests, as they spew rhetoric that is violent, assassinate the president, destroy America. Where's the hate?
Thank you all. When we come back, Catherine Herridge, live report on all of this. Rudy Giuliani, also Laura Trump, a busy news night. Stay with us. But the prosecution rests in the Manafort case, and Strzok is fired. With the very latest is our own Fox News chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge. Busy day today, Catherine.
Well, that's right, Sean, and good evening. The FBI is not commenting on Strzok's termination tonight, which frankly is standard because the Bureau doesn't publicly discuss personnel matters. What's important is that Strzok is now at least the 6th senior official to be fired, demoted, or to leave government service altogether since the scandal broke last year. In a lengthy statement, Strzok's lawyer said the FBI's deputy director overruled the Bureau's disciplinary review that recommended a 60-day suspension and demotion, implying that the decision was political. Strzok, who dodged Fox's questions last month, recently testified under oath that his politics never infected his work.
Like many people, I had and expressed personal political opinions during an extraordinary presidential election. But let me be clear, unequivocally and under oath, not once in my 26 years of defending our nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took.
Strzok's attorney also singled out the FBI Director Christopher Wray, alleging that Strzok's termination was a departure from, quote, typical Bureau practice and, quote, contradicts Director Wray's testimony to Congress and his recent public assurances. Director Wray recently responded to questions about Strzok and others.
There's a pending personnel matter, and as I said, I want to make sure that we're doing things, following our process, doing things by the book. Our Inspector General report has referred a number of individuals to our disciplinary process, and I think it's very, very important that we let that process, without delay, work itself through and get to a result, as opposed to responding to hue and cry.
In a separate development late today, the prosecution rested its case in the trial of Paul Manafort, the president's former campaign chairman, on bank and tax fraud charges. A Treasury Department official was the last witness for the prosecution, taking the stand for a second time and testifying that Manafort's company with Rick Gates, the government star witness, never filed paperwork for its foreign bank accounts. The judge allowed this testimony, but he was careful to remind the jury that the government had a chance to indict Manafort's company and chose not to, emphasizing to the jury only Mr. Manafort is on trial, and we will learn tomorrow morning if Manafort's defense team will call witnesses and present its own evidence. Sean.
It's going to be interesting. They may not. Here with reaction is President Trump's personal attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Let me start with Mueller. How is this case impacted? Because Strzok is at the heart of all of it. He claims.
I mean, he's played a much bigger role in this than a lot of the media wants to admit. I mean, first of all, he was there at the very beginning. He wrote all the initial documents justifying this investigation. He ran it for 11 months. He conducted the critical interview of Flynn with the very strange situation where Flynn pled guilty to a lie that the FBI said he wasn't guilty of. Go figure that out. He's the one who was carrying the dossier and using the dossier to justify the FISA wires. That has to be all unraveled. There's no doubt that there are 4 false affidavits filed with the FISA court. Fraud. Lying in an affidavit to the FISA court. The guy responsible for those was largely Strzok. He gathered the evidence, non-evidence. The dossier is absurd. It's a political
document bought and paid
totally
for.
ridiculous. It's
Russian document.
It says provably false things, like Cohen was in Prague. He wasn't in Prague. It says that there were real estate deals with the Russians. There were no real estate deals with the Russians. It has Trump.
The hookers in the bed was my.
Yeah. He was with. I mean, they have evidence he was with hookers in a bed.
Debunked.
Yeah, debunked. Completely debunked. Got the dates all wrong. It's a cut and paste job by a down-and-out ex-spy, English spy, who hated Trump. And was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC.
But they spread this information, Mr. Mayor, to lie to the American people, too, and lie to the court.
And the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, is hiding those affidavits on the grounds that the affidavits contain national security information. Well, my goodness, here are the things we need to know about it. Was the fact that Hillary Clinton and the DNC, the people who paid this, was that pointed out to the judge?
Right.
Because if it wasn't, you got a glaring omission. Was it pointed out that Steele, during the course of this, was fired by the FBI? Were his problems in his background exposed to the judge? I mean, when you present this guy, was he presented as a fully reliable informant, or were the questions that you have to do that in an affidavit? I wrote many of these affidavits.
They never told the court in these applications that Hillary paid for it. They purposely withheld that information.
Well, that would have been a non-starter.
But they never verified any of the information in there anyway.
So here's the point: Strzok created a false document. When we say, is there any evidence that his bias led to action that he took against Trump? Yeah. He perjured himself in an affidavit in order to start his insurance policy investigation. They were hoping they could do something with that before the election. But they ran into the same problem Mueller runs into. President didn't do anything wrong. They couldn't find any evidence. They struck out. On a couple of days before he was inaugurated, they had to proclaim there was no evidence of collusion, which is not a crime anyway.
Is there any update since you were on with us last, and that is that you responded to Mueller in terms of any potential that there'll be a discussion with the president?
No, they think they have all the time in the world, I guess. I don't know. They haven't responded.
Said it should be over by September.
Well, I think that we are running into a real big problem for them. If they try to drag this thing much into September, you've got a very clear violation of the Justice Department policy not to interfere with elections. Comey was just excoriated for that by Horowitz. It'll just be another list of their irregularities, their unethical performance, their unwillingness to follow sensible rules. They could have done this. We could have concluded this interview thing 2 months ago and decided yes or no on it. And their report could be done by now. It looks like they're slowing down. They're running out the clock.
The media would look at the 2005 tax case that has nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with the campaign, nothing to do with the president. Manafort tax case from 2005 is the trial of the century. Okay, that case. Well, that's really how they're portraying it. But more seriously, when we talk about Strzok and Comey and McCabe and Page and all these other people in the FBI and the DOJ at the highest levels, do you see crimes?
Oh, absolutely. I just told you one. The perjury on the affidavit. I was telling you about Hillary crimes a year before Comey outlined them all. I'm pretty good at picking out crimes.
How did she get off scot-free in all this?
She got off because it was a fixed investigation, a totally phoney fixed investigation.
Can she still be indicted?
Run by Peter Strzok, who then turns around. The dossier is obtained on the day that they dropped the case against Trump, against Hillary. So that case gets dropped, and they have to even up the score
the next day
and go after Trump the next day. Now the reality is, I'm going to tell you, and we don't have the time to go into it. We can do it later. I'm going to tell you who orchestrated, was the quarterback for all this. It isn't just Strzok. He's a bit of a puppet. Then there's Mueller. He's a puppet. People working for him some of them are really...
I have a funny feel you're about to drop a bomb on me. Go ahead.
The guy running it is Brennan. And he should be in front of a grand jury.
Is Brennan.
Brennan,
CIA director.
Brennan took an affidavit, a dossier, that if, unless he's the biggest idiot intelligence agent that ever existed, although he never really did much intelligence work, it's false. You can look at it and laugh at it. He peddled it to Harry Reid. That led to the request for the investigation. So he takes a false affidavit, a false dossier. He gets the senators involved, and a couple of Republican senators, and they demand an investigation. Totally phony investigation. Now, why can't we get an investigation when there are clear facts showing possible violations of the law? Why can't we? Even in the order appointing Mueller, which is completely illegitimate, they don't point out any crime. You have to point out a crime under the independent counsel regulations. They don't point it out. We have lots of crimes, and we can't get Sessions to move and appoint an independent counsel. He's recused from it. He's recused from everything. And Rosenstein is too much involved in it, and they're possible witnesses.
By the way, Rosenstein signed the last FISA warrant.
Well, that's why he's a possible witness and possible anything else.
Mr. Mayor, great to see you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Independent counsel to investigate the investigators.
When we come back, Frank Luntz will respond to a claim of Omarosa that she's making about him, Geraldo Rivera, Pastor Darrell Scott, and Laura Trump. All coming up straight ahead. All right, former Trump aide Omarosa is now making controversial claims in her new book. Many of her claims are coming under huge fire, including by pollster Frank Luntz. He tweeted, quote, "I'm in Omarosa's book, page 149. She claims to have heard from someone who heard from me that I heard Trump use the N-word. Not only is this flat out false, I never heard such a thing. Omarosa didn't even make an effort to call or email me to verify shoddy work." Frank Luntz is with us now. Also with us, the author of The Geraldo Show, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, pastor of the New Spirit Revival Center, CEO of the National Diversity Coalition for the President, Darrell Scott. Frank, not only did you make those comments, I called Sean Spicer before the show tonight. I called Katrina Pearson before the show tonight. They both make the same claims as you do, and I'm shocked that the publisher didn't fact check anything, apparently.
You know, as a writer, I hold the writer responsible. I've done 3 books, and if I get something wrong, even a spelling error, that's my job to fix it. There's no accountability. And I'm going to acknowledge something here. I've never liked the term fake news. I believe that very often it's biased or one-sided.
No, it's
but
fake.
I don't think it's made up. This book is made up. And there's no reason, and after tonight, we should not spend any time talking about it because, quite frankly, there's no value in it. And this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump has a favorability rating that he does, despite the criticisms of the media. It's because when people go at him, when they challenge him, They do so with things that have no credibility whatsoever. It's simply not believable, and it allows Trump to become even stronger and more effective. It's part of why the media has gotten it wrong, and it's part of a wake-up call. Stop lying, start telling the truth, give the American people what they deserve, the facts, and nothing but the facts.
Let me go to you, Geraldo. You've known Donald Trump for, what, 3 decades or longer. Your reaction to all this? 4 decades. You're much older than I am.
Well, you know, you and I were out Thursday night with Bo Dietl. That's the kind of relationship I had with the president back in the day. There were plenty of times in public and in private where guys are guys and people are, saying this and that. He never, ever uttered any word or phrase that could be remotely considered racist or racial. It is an absolute canard. It is a lie. And for her to secretly tape the White House chief of staff and other aides and the president of the United States, even in the secure situation room, it goes beyond what Frank, I think, accurately describes as a shoddy piece, as a piece of fiction. It is something that imperils the national security. And it is, to me, interesting that Omarosa, the most reviled public figure in reality TV history, suddenly became the darling of so many in the media. Why? Because she was attacking the president of the United States, Sean.
You know, Pastor, I became fond of Omarosa. I saw somebody beyond the reality TV show that I think the president saw. And then I talked to, I've known Frank for decades. I've known Sean Spicer for such a long time, Katrina Pearson, I've known you. And when they say that it wasn't even fact-checked, I'm pretty shocked at the publisher, to be honest, that they would allow it.
Yeah, I am too. You know, I met Omarosa through President Trump, and we became friends. I'm surprised she's went scorched earth, and all of the conversations her and I have had as 2 African Americans on the campaign trail, along with, Katrina Pearson, Lynn Patton, Diamond and Silk, and a few others. She never, ever even insinuated, even remotely insinuated, that the president was racist. In fact, she defended him very vigorously, and she even gave me talking points on, episodes from her life where he was just a help to her when her family members, I think her brother died or whatever, and he helped then. And even with, she told me about how much he helped her before, during, and after The Apprentice, helped her get deals, kept her in his orbit, in his loop. And even when she goes on to say that she was offered hush money, I don't see where somebody offering you a job, a landing space after you lose one job, and they offer you another job paying similar or if not the same amount of money. I don't see how that's hush money. I thought that was him being a friend and looking out for her as a friend would look out for another friend.
Frank, I got to imagine that there is, if you so desired, you would have a legal claim. Where do you stand on that?
I don't believe in propagating things that aren't true. I believe in accountability, and it's the #1 value that Americans want in Washington. And the #1 value they want from the news media, above everything else, is the truth. So whatever we can do to bring accountability and the truth to your viewers and all viewers across America, we're doing a good thing. Suing someone like that doesn't prove anything.
Geraldo, last word.
I just think that if the president can be faulted for anything, it is hiring this person who he should have said, "You're fired."
Wow. Okay, we'll leave it there. For somebody that's noted for that, I don't think he likes to fire people. Interesting. All right, when we come back, the president's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, weighs in on this and much more straight ahead. All right, former Trump aide Omarosa is now making controversial claims in her new book. Many of her claims are coming under huge fire, including by pollster Frank Luntz. He tweeted, quote, "I'm in Omarosa's book, page 149. She claims to have heard from someone who heard from me that I heard Trump use the N-word. Not only is this flat out false, I never heard such a thing. Omarosa didn't even make a effort to call or email me to verify shoddy work. Frank Luntz is with us now. Also with us, the author of The Geraldo Show, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, pastor of the New Spirit Revival Center, CEO of the National Diversity Coalition for the President, Darrell Scott. Frank, not only did you make those comments, I called Sean Spicer before the show tonight. I called Katrina Pearson before the show tonight. They both make the same claims as you do, and I'm shocked that the publisher didn't fact check anything, apparently.
As a writer, I hold the writer responsible. I've done 3 books, and if I get something wrong, even a spelling error, that's my job to fix it. There's no accountability. And I'm going to acknowledge something here. I've never liked the term fake news. I believe that very often it's biased or one-sided.
No, it's
but
fake.
I don't think it's made up. This book is made up. And there's no reason, and after tonight, we should not spend any time talking about it because, quite frankly, there's no value in it. And this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump has a favorability rating that he does, despite the criticisms of the media. It's because when people go at him, when they challenge him, they do so with things that have no credibility whatsoever. It's simply not believable, and it allows Trump to become even stronger and more effective. It's part of why the media has gotten it wrong, and it's part of a wake-up call. Stop lying, start telling the truth, give the American people what they deserve, the facts, and nothing but the facts.
Let me go to you, Geraldo. You've known Donald Trump for, what, 3 decades or longer? Your reaction to all this? 4 decades. You're much older than I am.